Whether you're a self-taught musician, have a teacher, or you're already a professional, this show is meant to help you with knowledge, mindset, craft, and strategies to improve your overall musicianship so that you can become the best musician you can be, regardless of your goals. Welcome to Musicianship Mastery. Hello and welcome to episode number 121. My name is David Lane and it is great to be with you once again. Let's start off with saying who this episode is for. So this episode is for absolutely everybody. Everybody who wants to be a musician on any level. Now you might be taking a peek at the title and see that it's all about developing a well-rounded voice, and you're thinking, well, shouldn't this just be for vocalists? And this is where I want to remind you about the original premise of this podcast, which is that there are certain musicianship tools that every musician should explore to become the best possible musician. And one of those is, even on a most basic level, the ability to sing. If you talk to the best musicians, if you talk to the best music teachers, and I'm talking about instruments, I'm not even talking about voice, you will hear that singing your music is one of the best ways to get in touch with the expressive qualities. And it's a way to discover things about the music that you just can't do with your hands. You need your voice. Now, of course, if voice is your primary instrument, this is going to be an especially helpful episode for you as well. But the great thing about a voice is that, barring exceptional circumstances, nearly all of you have this instrument. It's for free. All you have to do is take care of it and develop it. So I am talking today with my friend and my colleague of 11 years now, Thao Nguyen. He is a professional vocalist, actor, and voice teacher, and he has several other hats that he wears. We'll talk about some of those as we go. He is also a former voice teacher of me, for unfortunately only for one lesson, but it was during a brief time when I was flirting with the idea of taking my theater music directing skills to the next level. Very briefly, being a theater music director involves a lot of times not only planning the music, leading the music, being able to play an instrument, all of which I was more than comfortable with, but also teaching vocals. And I felt like to teach vocals better, I needed to get more comfortable with my voice. Well, in spite of only having one lesson, I learned quite a bit, which is really a mark of how well of a teacher he is. I learned quite a bit in just our hour together. And even though it's been many years ago since I had that lesson, we're going to talk about some of the things that I learned from that lesson. And one of those things is that you need to explore what your voice can do, not just how to make it sound quote unquote pretty. If you've sang in a chorus before, as I have, you've heard about the importance of having a voice that blends. But if you're going to be a soloist, you need to have a voice that stands out. There's some type of music where you want to sound lush and warm, and there's others where you want to be bright, you want to be nasally. So Thao is going to talk to us about the ways that we can explore the different aspects of our voices, and also offer some tips on vocal health, because this is an instrument that you've already paid for. You have it whether you want it or not. You might as well take care of it. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm very pleased to share it now. Here's my conversation with Thao Nguyen. Thao, it's great to finally talk to you in this context. Actually, first time I think we've talked in a while. It's been a while since our last gig together, so welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me.
So I was just kind of thinking about, and I'll say some things about you in the intro before this portion of the episode, but you have about as many interests, either hobbies or professional, as anybody I could think of. It's like if someone wanted to go find all the things you do, they could find. And I'm one of those people. I have to admit, especially this year, I'm not on social media nearly as much as I used to be. So I probably missed some things, but I've seen over the past few years, I've seen handyman videos that I'm sure you could talk about. You've also had like a travel service with you and your partner taking
Yes.
people to your home country, Vietnam. And then you've also had well, in the past, I think you and one of our mutual friends had like a clothing store downtown or
Yes.
something.
I
We're not going
think,
to talk about any about that today, though.
but none of that. But I think life, I don't know, I'm at a point in my life where there's a lot of exploring to be done, and there's a lot of just, yes, I went through, I think after the pandemic, I told myself I try to say yes to a couple more things, as opposed to being a little more like, no, this is the path I should go into. I try to, yeah, help myself say yes to more things.
That's cool. You know, I think there's a season for that. I hear various people say yes to more things, and hear people say no to both things. I think they're both right. Just depends on what season you're on. I'm in a say no phase right now. It's actually pretty hardcore.
Yeah,
Uh,
I admire your saying no. I think after my yes phase, which was like a year and a half, I started going into my curating yes phase, where I should say yes to something that will actually benefit a certain goal that I'm saying I'm going towards, as opposed to just saying a blanket yes to everything.
right. But, you know, I'm sure there's probably going to come a time where I say, well, you know, maybe I should kind of curb this and come back towards saying yes to more things. It's like, so
The pendulum.
always and never should be eliminated from the vocabularies because they are seldom going to be accurate. So.
It's true.
So we're going to talk today about, you know, what you do professionally. You are a vocalist. You are also a voice teacher. And one thing I like, and it's the reason I've been looking forward to having this conversation, is much like myself, you're a musician who likes to think critically about what it is you do and observe what it is that's happening, you know, in others. And I think you've had a lot of great things that I would encourage everybody who, after they listen to this conversation, wait till after, don't pause and then go do this now, but go check out all the videos that, you know, I know you can find them on TikTok and, you know, I guess Instagram as well. I mean,
Instagram, Facebook, I cross-pollinate a lot of them.
yeah, but you have done, I think, on TikTok is where I've seen like some reaction videos and
Hmm.
things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about the well-rounded voice. So I think you're the third guest I've had to talk about singing, and uh, we had a mutual friend, Katie Mullenkamp, before.
Mellencamp, yes.
Yeah, way back when this podcast got started over 2 years ago, and we just talked about kind of an introduction to singing, basics of singing, and then I also had my friend Bob Marks come on, who has worked with in New York with a lot of theater actors, and he came on from the perspective of being a vocal
Mm.
coach. You know, and we talked about the difference between a vocal coach and a voice teacher. You know, which so you are a voice teacher, and what I want to talk about today is just kind of the different ways you can explore your voice. So, I probably will have said this in the intro, but you were my voice teacher for one lesson. It wasn't all that it was intended to be, but you know, things came up on both our ends, and it was especially a busy time for me. So I never did follow up on another lesson, but that was entirely me, not you.
But you did great, and that's what
Oh,
we want.
thank you. But I'm gonna offer some things that have stuck with me since that lesson. And one of the things is that having no formal education with the voice, I picked up things that I heard from choral teachers and voice teachers when I was an accompanist, especially. And I think I developed some habits that helped me be like a good you know, to decent to good choral baritone, tenor, wherever I ended up being. But like you encouraged me to stop trying to be so pretty and explore some sounds that I might think in my head are ugly.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and just dive into that. Just talk about elements of a well-rounded voice and like what are some things that you know, if you're getting into singing or if you're trying to take that next step, what are some elements that one should explore?
Yeah, so I think we first have to talk about the difference between choral singing, a choral singer, and a soloist, right? Or even someone who sings mostly in the ensemble, in the chorus of an opera, and someone who sings as the principal.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of us starts off in chorus, right? Church chorus, community theater chorus, our local areas chorus. So we learned that blending is the best thing you could do with your voice
Mm.
to match the person next to you, to breathe with the person next to you, to go into this like hive mind as a chorus member. And it's a beautiful thing. I love singing choruses, but it's a different mindset and it's a different set of tools than you would use as a soloist. So,
Mhm.
what would make you successful as a soloist as opposed to a chorus member is that you do sound like an individual. If you notice, some of the most famous voices in the world, we can tell who they are just by hearing the timbre of their voice. I can hear everyone sing, I don't know, a C, a middle C, or a high C. Actually, I used to play this game where we would guess who the soprano was based on their high C because their voice was so distinctive. So that's one of the key trademarks of being a principal soloist as opposed to a chorus singer. You have to have an individual sound and you have to develop your technique to cultivate this individualistic sound. You also have to make different choices than if you would in a chorus environment. You have to actually make yourself stand out a little more in front because if I'm singing at the Metropolitan Opera, there are 40 other professional singers standing behind me, and if I'm the principal singer, I have to sound and do something that separates me from the rest of my colleagues back there. And my colleagues are no joke, right? All the professional singers in the chorus of the Metropolitan Opera are soloists themselves who have
Mhm.
trained themselves to work in an ensemble setting. So they can outsing any of the soloists, principal people downstage. They just choose that other job as opposed to this job. So
Right.
yeah, so I think there you need to reprogram your brain if you want to become a soloist to step out of the chorus mindset into a more um, direct, into a more direct and a more cultivated path as a soloist. That's my first tip for anyone who wants to be a soloist. Develop your personal sound. And talking about technique wise, I think in order to find that person that personal sound that you have that you don't use during the chorus time, you have to make ugly sounds. I think one of the things we worked on was really like nasally sounds, really just piercing meh sounds.
Yeah.
You can't be pretty when you start it off. Pretty comes later, right? You can't gild the lily because it ain't a lily yet. It's a pile of dirt. And you
Right.
have to form and shape this dirt. You have to find and pick out all the rocks and pick out all the dead leaves in order to cultivate this beautiful voice. In order to do that, you have to explore the dirt and find all the ugliness. And in the ugliness, you're like, oh, my soft palate moves like this, or my resonant chambers, because of my facial figures, has to resonate here as opposed to my other people or other colleagues who resonate at a different place. You have to find the area in your body that best suits you. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
A lot of time coming out of conservatory, there are cookie cutter teachers, or there are teachers who have fantastic techniques that is applied to every student, and then out of that conservatory, that training, everyone sounds the same.
Hmm.
I've noticed that a lot as a teacher who've sent their students off to universities, who've had their students come back from universities and retrain with me because they've lost the individuality of their voice.
Hmm.
And while the fundamental technique is great, the star, the excellence, the thing that separates them from everyone else has disappeared. So that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed as a voice teacher slash someone who's training soloists as opposed to chorus members, chorus singers.
Right. And just in terms of like what could you do with the voice, one thing that I really, of course, also admire about you is that you've had a significant amount of experience in opera as well as various types of musical theater. Now, I was thinking earlier this morning, just like there's some musical theater where I think maybe an operatic tone to an extent is actually appropriate, such as the first show we did together, Miss Saigon.
Yeah.
That's a good example. Also, Les Mis, and there's several others. And you know, to a point, like some of the early Rodgers and Hammerstein music. I'm currently working on Oklahoma as we're having
Yes,
this
you are.
conversation. So for the second time, so I did that 10 years earlier as well. But if you're going to do more of a rock musical, something like Rent, something, um, gosh, so many musicals based on movies now, I would say, so
Yes,
you're doing something like Legally Blonde, or you're doing something like maybe that hasn't really made the licensing yet, like Beetlejuice or something
right.
like that. Um, you're not going to be able to do the same type of vocal quality. And unless you have trained for it, you might not be able to do the same vocal quality. I'm sure there are plenty of people that could just nail, the lead for Beetlejuice that might not be singing Handel's Messiah, this
Right.
upcoming next Christmas.
But it's fabulous when they can, right? When I remember a moment, Jessie Mueller, I first saw her in a musical called Waitress,
Hmm.
by Sarah Bareilles, which is a contemporary musical, and I saw her belt, and it was a beautiful belt. But then she went and flipped the cards on me, and she played the leading lady in Carousel, which is
Mm.
Roger Hammerstein, and it's that type of genre in musical theater. We call it crossover, or like we call it legit singing, where there is the more classical sound, the vibratos, the warmer timbres, and stuff like that. She was able to do contemporary belt and then switch on over and do the more quote unquote legit singing. And I find it amazing and commendable that there are singers who can do both. And I think any singer, all singers can do both. The biggest cringe that I feel in my body is when operatic singers can't break out of the operatic timbre of their voice or the technique, and then they try to sing pop or they try to sing a contemporary song but still sounds like an opera singer. It hurts my soul.
Right.
And I was like, you are educated enough to know that this is not the sound that you should be producing, but it comes from an elitism that is trained into you from certain conservatories.
This is a funny story. I don't think I've ever told you this before, but it's from our mutual alma mater. Probably about, I'm gonna guess, a good 12, 15 years before you were there. But professor that was there both times, Ron Rudkin,
Mm.
and he told me and my classmates when we were studying with him for jazz orchestration, but we started talking about vocal styles, and he was talking about there was, I think, a couple of voice students who were, definitely there for opera, and he had basically got them this gig to do this commercial. They could not turn off their vibrato, and it was a bit of a problem.
Yeah, and it's not embarrassing, but it's so like, come on, come
Yeah,
on. We go to a pretty good school, so you should be able to do that.
right.
So when you and then you go into the real world and you're like, I can only sing in one style and I can't turn this off. And I mean, if you're really good and it's that's the only thing that you ever want to do with your voice, do it. Be a
Right.
master at it, right? But if you want to live in my world, if you want to live in a world where you can say yes to opportunities, you have to learn to shape and color your voice in different ways.
Right. I guess if I had done my homework a little bit better, I could have like asked you to give me opinion on a few musical examples before we got started. But when I was, I'm gonna see if I can get this year just right. I think when I was a freshman in college, I think I had already graduated high school. One of the big uh, pop culture albums to come out that year was the debut by Jewel, Pieces
Ah.
of You. And there were several things that I noticed about it. First of all, the fact that it was kind of basically neo folk music, and there was a lot of stuff going on. But I definitely noticed, and I'm not sure that I had an entirely positive opinion about the wide variety of vocal tones she uses in that album. And, it's like when she would land on the just angelic, sweet, beautiful sounds, of course, I naturally love that, but then it would become bright and she would put a twang to it and it would be distort. And I definitely came back to it later and appreciated it much more than I did, but it took me by surprise. And I know that there are other vocalists that have done that in albums. I mean, actually, it's kind of funny growing up. I was a Guns N' Roses fan in high school, and Axl Rose, it's like it took me probably a couple of listens to realize that these two different vocalists I'm hearing are the same guy. It's like there's a guy that sings way down here, and then this tenor that just belts way up high where the tone changes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually understand he grew up, he sang in a boys choir growing up, so he had that experience. So um, I guess what are some things people should do besides get a good voice teacher like yourself? What are some exercises? I mean, one that kind of stands out to me is maybe practice singing something with vibrato, sing it without vibrato.
Mm.
But what are some other things that people should be thinking about when they're singing?
Yeah, so first off, not every voice is for everyone, right? Not you don't have to like every voice, and that's perfectly fine. That's why there are Joni Mitchells in the world, and that's why there are Renee Flemings, and that's why there are Freddie Mercury. You know, that's why people gravitate to different singers because of the quality of the sound they produce. So, first tip is you don't have to be everyone's favorite.
Right.
You just have to be good, your favorite. So that's my first tip. My second tip would be how to. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Well, just what if people are trying to figure out what kind of voice they have and what they can do, and they're like me, and all they have ever done is sing warm, blending sounds. Maybe what are some exercises they should seek to do to explore different aspects of their voice?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So, depending on your age and depending on if you're a testosterone-driven voice or an estrogen-driven voice, I would get with my voice teacher, or if you don't want to invest in a voice teacher right now, which is totally understandable, and start playing around with where are speaking right now. Like most boys speak here, they speak right here, and they don't move and they don't switch their tone and they maybe have like a third interval in their voice and that's it. So if you speak down here regularly, I would advise you to start putting more pitch into your sound and then find a song that sits moderately in the middle of your voice. You have a fast car, da 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 da, whatever song you want, and then now start playing, start singing through it, and notice, oh, that goes a bit higher than I'm used to. Let me try to extend my range, right? I think with the youths, whenever I'm teaching someone younger than me, it's all about extending their range and proving to them that they can get out of this low frequency of speech pattern. So if you're a young person and you're trying to explore the voice, I would say start exploring range and start accepting that your voice can go past this speech frequency. That being said, if you are comfortable with expressing your range and with using different, more than like a fifth of your voice,
Yeah.
then I would recommend listening to your favorite singers, but listening to something you would never listen to. So if I listen to a lot of pop and rock, I would recommend someone go listen to something classical and then find out what the difference is between what the pop and rock singer that I'm listening to and how the opera singer is singing and I'm noticing the tone difference. I'm noticing maybe it's language or maybe it's the breathing that's different. Just start being interested in
Mhm.
what the difference is. Now, exercise wise, your voice teacher might have a million different exercises to try to access these different tones and these and try to elongate and stretch out your range. I can give you a ton of exercises, but I think it needs to first start with curiosity and a good ear.
Right. Um, I guess just to kind of give everybody just a little something, one thing that I find this very interesting that most voice teachers do is have you explore a lot of the voice without opening your mouth, but
Mm,
just kind of getting the nose engaged, just a lot of
mm.
kind of a more aggressive hum and some other things. And then of course, lip trills, these are kind of warm-ups, but they also are ways to explore this aspect of the voice that I find, you know,
Yeah, I so all those exercises you've listed, the lip trills, the humming, the anything with a closed or with a smaller lip where your embouchure is here, they're called SOVT exercises. They're called semi-oscillated vocal tract exercises. And they're exercises that have to do with breath pressure and actually aligning the vocal cords so that the vocal cords can vibrate at their most optimal vibration as opposed to either too much air or too little air. So lip buzzes or anything that has air being tunneled, being measured by your body is a good exercise to start trying to get to help your vocal cords align like that. So yeah, lip buzzes, anything on an NG, just feeling vibrations within your face. I think that's a great first step to figuring out what your individual voice is. Because sometimes people can't feel sympathetic vibrations in their mask, we call it, or in their nasal cavities. Sometimes they're just like, Tao, I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean feel a vibration underneath my nose or in my cheeks? I don't. I just that some people just can't feel like that. So I think there are plenty of exercises where you can try to manipulate and ask the singer to pitch the voice at certain parts of to get certain sounds. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, I'm probably gonna throw this on you. I mean, I am throwing this on you. So, sorry for if you need to be spontaneous with this.
Yeah, totally.
Let's think. You've mentioned a few. You and I have together mentioned a few vocalists. Like I mentioned Jewel. You mentioned Renee Fleming. You mentioned the actress from Waitress. I forgot her name.
Yeah, Jesse Mueller.
Okay. So just kind of think, let's think opera, let's think kind of classic style, like I don't know, that someone you would hear on Handel's Messiah,
Mm.
come back to
Mhm.
that. Let's think kind of hard rock singer, like hard rock, heavy metal, and let's think more of, I don't know, jazz or we could replace the category. We're just kind of contemporary musical theater, maybe three or four categories.
Mm.
Who would you recommend listeners go check out that you enjoy to hear three or four very different voices?
Yeah, so let's start with classical. And with classical singers, I know in conservatory we were always said, hey, pick a singer that you resonate with and look at their technique and look at how they style a phrase. And then we recommended a singer being like, you might be heading towards this person's career, right? Because with it's so weird coming from a classical background because you're always training for a role,
Yeah.
right? If you're a coloratura soprano, you're always trained to sing Candide, or you're singing Queen of the Night, or what, depending on your Fach. But as a baritone, they were always like, okay, let's go towards the baritone. Let's start listening to the baritone people, the baritone men, like Dmitry Horostovsky, Cesar Siepi, those really golden age. Well, Dimitri's contemporary, but golden age baritones. I would
Mhm.
recommend. So it's hard as a classical singer to tell you which one to listen to, but a
Right.
person that's always inspired me is Renee Fleming. I learned how to style my phrases because of her. I learned how to breathe because of her, and it doesn't matter because if I'm a baritone and she's a soprano, I can still learn things from her, right? So
Yeah, and to
there,
clarify, I'm not asking for like a one size fits. So I just want to know, who do you recommend? I mean,
yeah.
who for yourself, who do you enjoy listening to that just gives you these different examples? So we have Renee Fleming in the classical side. Give us some others.
Renee Fleming, the late great Dmitry Hodorkovsky. Someone I really like recently whose name is escaping me. It's a beautiful tenor, Bromheim. And then there's another Korean singer, Park Seok. The Koreans know how to sing.
Right.
The Koreans know how to produce a very well-rounded singer, especially in the classical world. They develop very beautiful toned singers. So classical music, I would recommend those people. For contemporary musical theater, a great technician that you should listen to is Jessie Mueller, is a person called her name's Lindsay Mendez. And a really great male technical singer is Aaron Tveit and Jeremy Jordan. When you watch them, you can see I mean, you shouldn't be able to see their technique, but with an educated eye, as a teacher or a musician, you can be like, ah, that's what they're doing with their body in order to achieve the sound. and it's a beautiful sound, and it's a very healthy technique that they do. So for contemporary musical theater, I recommend those people.
Awesome. Um, it's thinking about like hard rock and heavy metal, kind of that genre. Now you're gonna impress me if you actually know who I'm talking about. But one that I really like is Jeff Tate of the band Queensryche.
Mm-mm.
You ever check them out? Okay, so they they kind get lost in the shuffle. They are a Seattle band that came out
Mm.
maybe a couple years before Nirvana and a lot of these other Seattle band, the Seattle sound. So you kind of got this band that's nothing like them, this kind of
Mm.
in there. But they're considered a progressive heavy metal band, and like so we did do a heavy metal episode way back when, and one of the favorite albums that me and my guests both had was called Operation Mindcrime, like 1987. It's a concept album, but he's another guy that he changes his tone quite a bit. He's got a bit of a baritone that's hinting at classical. I wouldn't say you wouldn't confuse it with any voice to be an opera, but then a really powerful tenor belt that
Yes.
that's kind of aggressive, but it's not like distorted or anything like that.
It's so weird because you think opera and rock are two different sides of the spectrum, but actually, if you listen to the singers if you listen to rock singers with just their vocals alone, you hear vibrato, you hear tone shifts, and you hear actually a warmer quality than you would actually think a rock singer should have. Many great opera singers can sing rock really well because there is vibrato in rock, and there is a bite to the sound in rock that we as opera singers cultivate.
Mhm.
So the crossover between rock, it's harder to sit for a classical singer to sing pop than it is for them to sing rock.
Right.
Mm.
Interesting.
I
Okay.
know. And then because of the energy that you put to the microphone, I think one of the biggest things classically trained singers, the hardest thing they can do is sing with a microphone because we're trained not to sing with a microphone. We're trained to resonate to the back of the house, to a back of a 4,000 seat house. But to make our sound so intimate that a microphone can pick it up without being blown out, that's so hard for us. And I
Right.
think we share that sometimes in common with certain rock singing where they have to hold their microphone at a certain way or find a certain volume hertz level so that they don't blow out the microphone because the energy and the resonance is so similar.
Right. I also thought of another vocalist who has explored a lot of different styles, and it's someone that I checked out really for the first time paying attention to it last year, and that was Linda Ronstadt.
Yes,
Yeah.
I've been cheated. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I only knew her from things I'd heard on the radio. I'd never sat down and listened to an album, but I read a book that was about this era in Los Angeles where all these artists came together. They were on one tour, and then they all kind of had success at the same time. And it was Linda Ronstadt, her tour, that was kind of centered around. And there was a little bit of bio about her, but I just decided to check out. And of course, you've got her pop sound, but she has country albums that she's done with Dolly Parton and I can't remember the other person off the top of my head, but it's a trio that she's done. She's also done some Hispanic albums that are singing songs that her father knew,
Ah,
and I'm pretty sure she has at least, yeah, like Pirates of Penzance. She was in
yeah,
that.
she was Mabel.
Yeah, so I mean, that's one person you can probably check out, four or five different albums to hear. You'll always be able to tell it's Linda Ronstadt, but at the
Right.
same time, it's like this is a very different way of exploring, and probably just worth what are the differences, in the albums in terms of vibrato and
Yeah.
um, maybe word pronunciation, in
And
terms.
there is, right? You have to, once again, to be a well-rounded singer and to be a working singer that what one of my biggest gripes
Mhm.
about conservatory training, and that being said, we both came from conservatory training, but my biggest gripe for classical singers who want to explore opera or who want to have a career in opera is that after you get your bachelor's, you kind of sort of have to go on to get your master's, and then you kind of sort of have to go on to do young artist programs, and you kind of have to sort of go on to do blah 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 until your voice matures, which is around your mid 30s up to 40s, and then you can start singing in bigger houses and start having a full-fledged career. And that's, to me, that's such a waste of time. I'm just going to say it, right? You're wasting your 20s and your 30s waiting for your voice to finally get to the level where it can fully take on a full orchestra without doing too much damage, and you can have these international careers. I think in order to have a very successful career as just a singer, you need to develop a voice that you can make money on in your 20s, in your 30s, until you can have a full-fledged operatic career if you want it in your 40s, 50s, and 60s. I think yeah, I think what that's one of the biggest downfalls that the conservatory style training imparts on their singers is that if you're not singing classical, don't sing anything else because you'll
Speaking of
ruin.
conservatory training, maybe it's just maybe it's a stereotype that I kind of project based on just a few experiences, handful of experiences I've had in the past. But is elitism still a thing among voice teachers, especially classical voice teachers at opera, that don't really maybe have a hard time seeing the value of other genres and other ways of singing? Is that still a thing?
I agree with that. I resonate with that, and I've seen that. There is a certain level of elitism, and that's in any technical school. It's in any trade school, right? I think if you are a professional in your field and you're trying to teach your field at the highest level ever, you're gonna be like, no, this is how you do this. This is the best type of singing, and this will preserve your voice, blah 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 blah. And everything else is trash, or everything else is less than what I'm gonna teach you.
Right.
I think there is so much elitism, and it's detrimental to the student when they get into the real world and they learn that, oh, maybe my classical technique is not gonna make me money in this commercial gig, which will pay much more than my classical gig, right? I learned very young that we just talked about this. Certain voices don't fit in certain other areas, and you have to learn to manipulate your voice in order to finish a gig or do a certain gig.
Mhm.
And I learned that in order to pay my bills, I have to develop a toolkit that lets my voice be as versatile as it can be in order for me to get that paycheck and to perform and to do whatever gig is required of me. But sadly, my colleagues graduating from certain conservatories can't do that. So they have to do other jobs that doesn't involve the voice until they can finally make it as an opera singer with a fully fledged developed voice in their 30s, 40s.
Right. And I think everybody does go through this, you know. I mean, as somebody who has a composition degree, but then studied film scoring for my master's, um, you know, I don't think it's as much as it used to be, but there absolutely have been composers and composition teachers who look down on film music. I'm sure they also look down on composing theater music as something that is not worth their time or whatever. But at the same time, I found I like writing music that many more people are going to hear and enjoy.
Yeah.
And it collaborates with other artists as well. And you know, that's not to say that that's superior. I admire people who can come up with very original sounding concert pieces, but at the same time, you know, the theme of this podcast has been that you should explore different ways to interact with music in general, whether that's as a vocalist or as a composer or instrumentalist. Um, so yeah, we've given some names. I want to talk just briefly about vocal health,
Mm.
and let's start off with habits. What are things people do, even like myself, all the time? Whether it's, I don't know, vocal fry, clearing your throat, or what are some things that we might be doing that we might not be aware of, and feel free. I didn't explain what vocal fry is, but I got that from you. I got that from one of your videos.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, their vocal health is very important. That should be your number one thing as a musician, as a singer, because if your voice is gone, your job's gone, right? That's your instrument. We can't, one thing about singers is that our instrument lies in our body.
Mhm.
So, whatever we do with our body directly affects our instrument. It's not like a violinist or an oboist where they're like, oh, the room's cold, so my violin is not, up to snuff. We can't say that with our voice. So vocal health is very important. There are certain things that society has led us to do that are quite unhealthy for our voice. Because we talked about vocal fry, I'll start with vocal fry first. Vocal fry in itself is not unhealthy. Actually, it could be a technique to help you access certain parts of your voice. It's when you're constantly in your vocal fry for 12 hours a day and you're speaking in your vocal fry like this for 12 hours a day that it becomes a problem. But if you're using the vocal fry to make sure your vocal cords are coming together well, like uh, uh, exercises like that, it's
Yeah.
perfectly fine. It's all you also run into trouble when you put too much air in your sound, which is very weird for a singer to say, right? You're because growing up, especially in the choir setting, your choir person might be like, more air for the high notes, use more support, more air, shoot out those high notes. But as a trained vocalist, you learn that actually your high notes require less air than your mid voice, if not your lower voice. So certain things like that. I would also avoid, it's very tempting, but trying to clear out your
Yeah.
throat like that. Because you're like, there's phlegm on my throat. I can feel it. So let me just push. What you're doing is you're pushing air up through your vocal cords and you're slamming your vocal cords together, which is how you develop nodes and polyps and you just damage the very delicate lining of your vocal cords. Hydration, stay very well hydrated. I recommend drinking a lot of water, eating a lot of foods with lots of liquid in it, like grapes, fruits.
Mhm.
If you're an active performer, I would invest in a humidifier. I would invest in a personal humidifier and a nebulizer. There's a difference between a humidifier or a personal humidifier and a nebulizer. One is cold steam and one is warm, hot steam. You want to use hot steam when you're done with singing and when you're cooling down for the day. But if you're still singing and you need moisture or you're about to go and sing, I would use my nebulizer because that cold mist will not loosen the muscles too much so that you can't perform, right? It will still keep your muscles in a good position while also putting moisture back into on top of your cords and in your throat. So those are some vocal health things, and also just generally learning how to speak correctly. Once again, we all speak down here because the microphone is right here, and I don't have to project, and I don't have to yell, and I don't have to do anything. I could just speak into the microphone. I blame Bing Crosby for this, but I also love Bing Crosby for this because he started the crooner thing, right? Why
Yeah.
do I need to be like Ethel Merman and project when the microphone's right here and I can sing I'm dreaming of a white Christmas right here. So we as a society, we're used to speaking into a microphone, but we need to also learn how to resonate and how to put our voice in an area that's healthy and will, yeah, resonate a little bit better.
As every good theater director will say, don't trust that microphone.
Do not trust that microphone. Right. I'm having that trouble now at a show I'm directing. I was like, the can't microphone can't amplify what you don't give it.
Right. Exactly. Well, this is a lot of great stuff. I'm glad we were finally able to have this conversation. So you are everywhere in all kinds of forums and social media. So whatever you'd like to share, where can people follow you or find out more about you? Especially, definitely mention especially your vocal instruction.
Yeah, so you can follow me on all social medias at the Tao of Tao, and I'll spell that out for you. It's the at sign the THE Tao TAO of OF Tao THAO, my name. So it's the Tao of Tao on all social medias, YouTube and all that. And if you want to check out my current project, I'm actually doing a film. Actually, I have two projects in the can right now. I'm doing a film that's filming right here in Winston-Salem. It's a vampire like horror rom-com that's gonna be
Mhm.
very fun. It's called Night Terrors on Trade Street.
Right.
So if that comes out whenever this podcast comes out, you can check that out on all streaming services. And then I'm also doing a project with Alexander McQueen's estate that's currently featured on Vogue. You can find it on the Vogue website. So if you want to go on there and support me, that'll be great. And then if all else fails, you can visit my website at www.taotnguyen.com.
Great. So actually, I was just trying to think. I know your partner is in some streaming episodes.
Yes.
Do you occur? Aren't you in one or
Yeah,
two of them?
so you can also, if you want to see any existing work, you can go on Disney Plus. I am on Marvel's She-Hulk, and then there are other projects in the can that hopefully will be released soon, and I can share that information later.
Okay, excellent. Tao, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
And that's going to wrap up today's episode. Just a few reminders before we finish today. Your thoughts are always welcome on any episode, whether you wish to share it with your voice by going to speakpipe.com/musician toolkit, or if you want to leave me a message and through email by going to my website at davidlanemusic.com and filling out the contact form. If you're watching on YouTube, you can, of course, comment on the video, and please like and subscribe if you're on YouTube and you haven't done so already. Most importantly, please share this episode with a friend who you think would also enjoy this content. You can follow me on Instagram at David Lane Music or on Facebook at David M. Lane Music. And I'll be back with you again next week. Until then, thank you so much for listening.